Our love story started like any good classic love story does. Once upon a time, I dated Joe's college roommate. I hadn't heard from Joe since college graduation when I got a late night phone call. I was living in Champaign, Illinois, working my first TV job. He called to tell me about how he was starting his own business. He was moving to Florida. He was going to be very rich and buying a boat. He said he'd be in town for training and we should catch up. Weeks went by and he called again to see if he could actually stay with me for that training. Just a few days, he said. I really wanted to avoid the whole thing. I hadn't seen this guy since college and now he wanted to sleep on my couch, but somehow I couldn't seem to say no. It was the night before he was to arrive and I got a call that plans had changed. The training wasn't 3 days, it was actually 3 weeks, and his cousin would be staying too. It's hard to tell that story without Joe because we've told it so many times. It's our favorite story to tell around a big group of friends, a dinner party. I always knew when he would chime in with his version of the story, I was in love with him, I wouldn't stop calling, I don't believe any of it. Joe was my very best friend. We were partners in crime, the first and last on every dance floor. When Joe was diagnosed with cancer, he begged me not to marry him. He said he didn't want this for my life. He said, if anyone deserves the fairy tale, Amanda, it is you. I hope he knows that he did give me the fairy tale, the most beautiful love story ever told. We knew we were a perfect match because of how badly we both wanted to have a family. We both wanted 4 kids. We wanted an even number so no one had to ride a ride at Disney alone. It just made perfect sense to us. When people say to me how lucky I was to have known a love like this because so many go their whole life without it, I smile, I quietly shake my head yes. It's true in some ways and of course so incredibly tragic in others. But I don't necessarily agree with it. I believe that the love that we had is the very same love that we are all capable of. You just don't realize how hard you can love until you realize that you can actually lose it all. Joe and I were forced to choke down the concentrated version of love in our short 3 years of marriage. A love that most people can slowly sip over decades. A love spread out over time may not feel as powerful, but I promise you, you have a love just like this. Love that you should be cherishing every day the way we were forced to. All Joe ever wanted was to be a dad. Looking at Mira every day is the only reason I'm able to stand here. It's also the reason I am so tired. I will never let her dad be forgotten. I will never stop telling stories about him. If you knew Joe, you knew love. He never got off the phone with anyone without saying, I love you. He was known to kiss his friends, even the biggest, toughest dudes, right on the mouth. Every day I find myself now trying to be more and more like him, even if it means putting my dirty clothes in the hamper instead of on the floor. If I'm upset with someone, I call them, I face the issue, I don't let it brew or send a cryptic text message. Joe always said, if you're still talking about the same thing after 3 text messages, it's time to pick up the phone. Joe loved hard. He tried to do the right thing, and he always finished what he started. Joe lived loud, he loved deep. And whether you knew him or not, I hope just by hearing about Joe, you'll feel inspired to always do the same and to live JoeStrong.